Hello, here is another Trews between me and an Alain de Botton, a philosopher who I recently captured because he was free, wandering around, thinking his thoughts and loving thinking in life and that. Now, what about that? What does this mean when we see Prince Harry being presented in macho fashion? Here's the sort of one of the heirs to the throne, Prince Harry, scared to the throne. Harry put at risk. But I mean, the story's one thing, but the image is another. Harry here is looking militant. He's dressed in combat fatigues. He's got a gun.
See, this is all about authority. Should authority be aggressive or not? And so traditionally, hardwired in the back of our minds is the idea that the big chief is angry and strong and kills. But
That's hardwired.
Somewhere in the primitive mind. But of course, we actually want the royal family to be very nice and very kind. So Harry's a really odd figure, because he's both part of this sort of kind family that cuts ribbons and does nice things, and yet he seems to be quite an aggressive guy who might try and kill, the bad guy. So, we're ambivalent about that, I think. Probably a side of human nature that thinks, it's quite good that he picks up a gun and, he's supposed to be the chief. He's the chieftain's son.
I quite liked it that he had a gun there, but I think what's important what you're saying is that in a way the appearance of the royal family constantly in media is to place them at the top of a hierarchical structure, so that we sort of never question, hey, shouldn't we have a more lateral, horizontal social structure?
Well, although I think the royal family it's such an easy topic. People go, well, I don't really like the way society is run. Think about the royal family. And actually, power is really held in much more subtle and we don't know the people who are, really pulling the moves. And the royal family is actually a rather impotent organisation, in all ways.
Alan, don't be so rude about the royal family! But
they're not really...
Harry could fire spunk out of that gun! So they walk that tightrope between normalcy and exoticism on a daily basis.
Like Jesus. It's that idea of the exalted person who's come down to earth and walks among ordinary people. It's like the God actually has a baby. This is Prince William has had a child. It's a very, we respond to this very, it's kind of the ordinariness of the extraordinary is very touching and special.
Why?
Well, because we're always afraid that power doesn't understand ordinary life. So any examples of extraordinary people? The other day there was a picture of Taylor Swift in the newspaper she went to buy some groceries. She went to buy some salad and some orange juice. And this was and the newspaper didn't quite know what to say about this. But really, it just showed us the picture. But I think deep down the fascination is she's a goddess. She does not generally, reside, she's in Mount Olympus, and she's come down to walk among ordinary mortals at Whole Foods. And she's picking up some grocery items. So it's kind of, the ordinariness of the extraordinary we're fascinated by.
Isn't the problem, Alan?
Which is ridiculous, by the way,
yes.
Because of course all of us are ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. So this kind of fake pseudo-democracy, you're both hyping up somebody by making such a big deal about the fact they're in the supermarket.
Because they've misunderstood the nature of paganism, because the function of paganism to say that these are divine attributes to which we should aspire. Aphrodite represents this divine attribute. Don't worry about the flesh and the tits of Aphrodite, or whether Aphrodite's having a salad and some orange juice and popping down the shop. So that there's a code. Paganism and pantheism is to give us a code that there is divinity, as you just said, within all things, but by exalting the individuals as opposed to the attributes which they're meant to represent. It's easier to create a hierarchical repressive system, which, Alan, we've got to overcome. Now, the truth ends with a reading of something intelligent. Yes. Normally it's me doing that, but because you're a proper philosopher, you do it,
okay,
please.
So we've got some Nietzsche, and he's ecce homo. So the good thing about Nietzsche, most philosophers...
Tell us about Nietzsche.
Most philosophers are quiet types who don't want to do very much with the way the world actually is.
Are you like that, or are you...
No.
You're active.
More active.
You're quite entrepreneurial.
Quite entrepreneurial, yeah. So Nietzsche wanted to create a revolution, which is really unusual. There are only two philosophers in the 19th century who want to create a revolution, Nietzsche and Marx. And they're very similar in some ways, and they both did, do a lot of things. And what I like about him, he writes with absolute gusto. He lost his mind, and partly he lost his mind because he was using it too much and not having enough sex.
He'd sent himself mad. He didn't have the release of having sex.
Exactly.
And
he was thinking too much. Yeah.
When he wrote this, where is he on that journey?
He's on the way to madness.
This is the scribblings of a man on his way to madness.
I mean,
this is the Trews land.
Yeah.
We don't want some lunatic ranting.
For example, look at the chapter headings. Why I write such good books. Why I'm so clever. Why I'm so wise. I mean, these are good. These are his ego has broken free. But look, here's what he says. I know my fate. One day there will be associated with my name the recollection of something frightful, of a crisis like no other before on earth, of the profoundest collision of conscience, of a decision evoked against everything that until then had been believed in, demanded, sacrificed. I am not a man. I am dynamite.
All right, that's like hip hop.
Yeah, and he was the gentlest guy, little moustache, meek guy.
I'm like dynamite.
but in his study,
Friedrich Nietzsche.
but in his study, he could let loose, and that's the thing about writers. Writing,
he was right though, wasn't he? Because didn't they say the Nazis were a bit inspired by some of Nietzsche's writing?
Yes.
They did go on a right rampage.
Let's just sum up what Nietzsche did and his achievement. He pointed out that all morality and moral codes that had until then been associated with God, he pointed out had obviously been invented by human beings.
Cool.
And therefore, if they've been invented by human beings, they are relative. That doesn't mean to say, people have said that he's a nihilist. In other words, he doesn't believe in good and evil at all. He doesn't think that anything's good and anything's bad. That's absolutely wrong. He merely thought that the categories of good and evil are not descended from on high. They are made up by humans. And therefore, we can take control. And we don't have to be scared of something from above.
Is that his edict, God is dead then?
That's his edict, God is dead. He was a very moral and kindly man, and what he wanted was what we all want, which is a world free of false illusions and cruelty and bullshit. And he wanted to free us of this, and his work amounts to a giant call for happiness and fulfillment, which he believed was within our grasp, so long as we start to think.
Oh my God, through thinking.
He's a thinker. But of course, the academics have killed him. They've squashed him. He's been put in Penguin Classics, and he's been buried under commentary, and you wouldn't know at all that this was a man who wanted to change the world, because the function of academia is to take the best ideas that the world's ever had and kill them, so that they are not under any threat of changing anything.
That's why I didn't even bother to go to school, because I knew that academia was just crushing my thinking boxes. Brilliant, that was some really good Trews. That was some Trews with Alain de Botton. I bet you hate this singing bit. That was some Trews with Alain de Botton. Some Trews, well done. That was brilliant. Well done, thanks for your contribution.